230-4242. That's 559-230-4242. If you want to join the discussion, we will have Todd Madison from Transparent, California. When we return, this is John Gerardi filling in for Trevor on the Valley's Power Talk. Joining us on the show to dive in, John Gerardi filling in today for Trevor Carey. Joining us to dive in on the debate going on here in Fresno about teacher pay as Fresno Unified Teachers are about to strike. We have Todd Madison. Todd Madison is with Transparent, California, and I thought he wrote a really excellent, really interesting op-ed on the topic of teacher pay within Fresno Unified and how it and without giving his final conclusion, I thought he gave great analysis to inform us as voters and observers of all this. So, Todd, thank you so much for joining the Trevor Carey Show.
Oh, sure. Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was laughing, Agent Squires. I thought for a minute that you knew our intrepid producer here at PowerTalk, Agent Squires. I realized you were making a reference to a 70s rock band bassist. So that was my mistake there. All right. So, Todd, I thought you guys were old buddies somehow. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about, you wrote this excellent op-ed, so I'll give you the floor kind of to give the thesis statement of it, I guess, which is that basically comparing Fresno Unified Teachers with other professionals in Fresno County with the same level of educational attainment. Basically, Fresno Unified Teachers are making way more. And I'll stand back and maybe let you fill in some of the details of that.
Sure. No, that is true, and that's actually true for pretty much all of California. I mean, there are some districts that have some variation on that. So Transparent California collects public pay data from every public agency in the state of California. There's about 4,700 agencies. We probably collect at least 3,000 data sets every year. Fresno Unified is one of those. So we're actually looking at real data. This is data from the payroll records of these agencies. This is not a survey. This is not a self-reported thing. This is actual data that went into people's W-2 forms to get reported to the IRS. So it's real data. So the key question that we often see, in various studies, they say, okay, what is fair for a teacher? What is a fair wage, right? We see that in strikes all the time. We're striking for fair pay. We want a fair contract, so on and so forth. So what is fair, really? What you need to look at, what is fair in private industry is making as much money as you could make doing something else, right? With the same education. If a radio host only makes $10,000 a year everywhere in the world, then if you make $11,000, you're getting a fair wage, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I'm above average, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how it works. So what we need to look at is we need to look at two things. First, we need to look at what the median wage of a Fresno Unified teacher is, and then we also need to look at what is the median wage of someone in that area with the same education level. Right. If you come out of school with a bachelor's degree in Fresno County, how much do you make in general? Mm-hmm. So fortunately, we have a lot of data to use for that. The U.S. Census Bureau actually publishes data on comparably educated median pay. That's the American Community Survey. Anybody can look it up. So you can take a look at that. And then, of course, Transparent California has the data on actual pay. And the California Department of Education then publishes data on education levels by district. So you can look at that. Right.
So how much more than let's start just with take-home pay. We'll get into benefits next, but just starting with take-home pay, what are we looking at comparing? So again, your basis of comparison here was Fresno Unified Teachers against Fresno County residents or Fresno County workers, I guess, with the equivalent levels of education attainment. So what are we looking at?
So in Fresno County, a resident with the same education level comparable to a teacher makes $74,155, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. That same teacher in Fresno Unified actually makes $99,144, and that's in gross pay only, not including benefits, any of that stuff. Right. So right there, we're looking at about $15,000 a year more for a Fresno Unified teacher than they would make if they quit their job and went to do something else, or came out of college with the same degree and moved to Fresno and did something else with that education. Right.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things about that, as I'm sort of looking at this and thinking out loud, I mean, there's obviously scales of teacher pay, within that $99,000 median pay, a brand new, kindergarten teacher is probably making less than that versus, I don't know if they scale these things based on high school versus grade level, but a high school English teacher who's been there for 40 years and does a great job and has great reviews is making way more than $99,000. But even on that scale, I'd have to imagine at all points, looking at maybe years of experience, teachers have to be just absolutely dominating their counterparts in the private sector.
Well, probably not at all points, because starting pay in teaching is artificially low.
Okay.
The teachers union determines that. I don't know if you've seen the salary schedule for a teacher. They have what they call the step and column, and that starts with a starting rate that's usually pretty low, and then rises up from there. If you look at that, you can see the average step, that they get every year is pretty consistently equal throughout the schedule until usually the last few steps. So usually the last few steps, they get kind of an outsized raise, which is really, I think, just setting themselves up for a pension. They're raising their final rate so that their pension will be higher when they retire. But what they do that is at the expense of starting pay. They could take that final step and they could cut it back to the normal raise that they get throughout the schedule, and they could add several $1,000s a year to the starting pay. So, I think starting teachers deserve a raise. I think they should make more money. And they could do that. All they have to do is just restructure their schedule and spread the same money across in a different way. That's all.
But then, of course, probably the teachers who've been there the longest, they're the most entrenched, they're the most in with the union, they're maybe calling the shots a little bit more than a first-year teacher who, maybe she'll do something else 3 years down the road. Yeah. Well, you mentioned pension. So I thought that would set the table for me to ask you. So take-home pay, it's $99,000 for teachers median, $75,000 median for other people in Fresno County with comparable educational attainment. What are we looking at? What are we looking at, though, as far as other benefits, and how much more Fresno Unified teachers are getting when you factor that in?
Sure. No, that's a great point. So you and I, at least in the jobs I've had in the past, we get a 401k contribution. We get a Social Security contribution from our employer. So our employer contributes 6% of our pay to the Social Security. They contribute 4% usually as a 401k match. So it's about 10%. You get in your compensation, you're getting 10% more in what they call non-paycheck compensation. A teacher gets something like 29% more for their retirement plan. If you add up all the contributions made by the district, the state, everyone involved in this thing. So they're getting 29% of their pay every single year. For the median $99,000 teacher, that's almost $30,000 a year towards their retirement. And that's, easily about 19% more than you and I would get, 29% minus 10%, so 19% more. That's $19,000 a year. Now, I don't know about you, or people listening, but if my employer had given me $19,000 extra per year to go into my 401k for 30 years, and
that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money over 30 years. Yeah.
Well, $3 million at the end of that.
Oh, wow.
And I would have said, thank you very much. I would have said, thank you very much. I would not have said, that doesn't count. That's not money I can take home. So the private resident, that guy making $75,000, he would have to take $19,000 out of that and put it into his retirement account to have an equal retirement to a teacher. So it counts. It's definitely a part of pay. So if you want to talk about comparable pay, Fresno Unified private resident would have to make about $119,000 a year to equal what that median Fresno County teacher is making.
So again, to reiterate, median Fresno teacher is making $99,000. To match that, really, a non-teacher in Fresno County would have to make more like $119,000. So that's really exactly. That's what we're talking about. So the number that you so looking at all of it put together, the bottom line that you sort of get to comparing teachers versus, again, general public, same levels of education, it's about $45,000 per year more when you're looking at both benefits and take-home pay. That's the median difference between teachers and the rest of us.
The delta. Yep, that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was interesting from your piece that you're just sort of saying, these are the facts. Make the policy decisions with it as you will. But maybe you can speak to that a little bit. That you're not necessarily advocating a policy position, though. Frankly, it's kind of making me lean a certain way. But these are just the facts.
Yeah, well, the facts should help you lean a certain way. That's what facts are for.
Sure.
So, really, it's not my call to say, is a teacher underpaid, overpaid? I always say, is it underpaid, overpaid, or just right? The Goldilocks question. Mm-hmm. That's not my call. That's the parents of Fresno Unified. They have to make that call. And they have to keep in mind that every dollar that you give to an employee is a dollar that they can't use to improve education. I heard your show a little bit before this. You're talking about the latest SBAC report and, how miserable that is. That seems like something we should focus our attention on. When it comes to deciding how to spend their money, maybe they should figure out, what to do there. I've done some math here, and it looks to me like the cost of this agreement, if they agreed to everything the teachers proposed or the union proposed, it would cost the district about $175 million a year. So I'm going to guess that they could do a lot of good work to improve the education of kids if they put that $175 million into something else.
Yeah, and I guess I want to ask the question. I mean, I know there's a certain unreasonableness to directly 100% tying teacher pay to student performance. You can have a great teacher and have some kids with bad outcomes because, parents don't value education or, difficult socioeconomic circumstances, whatever. Are there other districts, though, maybe non-union districts, who do more to kind of in some way tie teacher pay to performance, maybe on an individual teacher-by-teacher basis, or is that just a non-workable thing given the nature of California's public school system?
You could not do it in California. I've seen schools in other states that have tried things like that. Unfortunately, it tends to be a half-assed effort. They'll throw like $1,000 bonus on some performance metric for a year. And I used to design compensation programs for a national retailer. I was in charge of a division of a national retailer, so I know a little bit about designing bonus programs. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that they need to be frequent, they need to be significant, and they need to be something you feel you have control over. You need to have something where you think, okay, well, I can make a change here, and then it has to be frequent enough so that every 3 months, every quarter, every 6 months, every month, something like that. If you just, put a bonus on something at the end of the year and it's not that significant, people will wait. Human nature. Mm-hmm. They'll forget about it. They'll wait, and the very last month they'll scramble to try and meet their goal.
Teach to the test, and
Yeah. And so I mean, you need to. If I were in charge of a school and I didn't have a union to battle, I could come up with ways to incentivize teachers to perform, mm-hmm. and I could do it in ways that would not depend on like a specific class and a specific kid. The point you make is perfectly valid. I've seen in my own kids, they get in with a class that teacher just had bad luck. They just happened to hit like every disruptive kid, in school that year.
And that drags down the rest of the kids.
Yeah. But there are ways you can. There are mathematical ways you can control for that, and make a valid measure of what the teacher is doing, what their impact is on those kids, and that's what we want. We want impact, a good impact.
Sure, and it just seems like we're so dragged down by kind of the weight of this is the system we have, this is the system we're always going to have, and to really think outside of the box, I just think would take a lot more political will and ingenuity than unfortunately we have. So anyway, Todd, I really appreciate you joining the show. Maybe let folks know about where they can learn more about you and your work. And again, I encourage people read the awesome op-ed from the Fresno Bee that Todd Madison from Transparent California wrote.
Sure, transparentcalifornia.com. Go there, look up your local public employees, and be prepared. Sit down first.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Todd. It was a delight having you on the show. Wonderful op-ed. Thank you. All right. We will be back with more here on the Trevor Carey Show. John Gerardi filling in for Trevor. 230-4242. That's 230-4242. 559-230-4242. John Gerardi filling in for Trevor on the Valley's Power Talk. Our thanks to Todd Madison from Transparent California for being on the show with us. That was just fascinating.